Wow, looks like you're still here.
She's got a high shame tolerance.
Honestly, I'm surprised she had the guts to show up here alone.
What kind of wife doesn't even cook for her husband? You should probably be stricter with yourself before you worry about that child.
Was it suspicious that I was looking at ads meant for families? Am I such a bad wife I don't even look taken?
Spy Family is an anime full of bright and joyful family moments, somewhat contrasting against the backdrop of potential world war which created the situation for such a family to begin with. Its characters function in a similar way, each dropping hints to the true nature of their past, which seems oh so far from the present they're pretending to be in. While she's the least utilized so far, I think Yor provides us the best look at this concept, and in a way which frames the downfalls of pretending to be perfect, something I'm sure is all too obvious isn't just a problem for this odd family, but for everyone. So let's look deeper into her character and see what we can learn about her and the downfalls of the act. We have limited information so far, but most of her behavior can be explained by the past. Growing up without parents, she was forced to provide for her younger brother Yuri. It's not a complex story, and that's really what it amounts to. There was a gap that needed to be filled, the one providing for those most vulnerable. So she took up lucrative work, becoming an assassin so she could both provide for her brother and also watch over him as much as he needed. It was done out of love, but with love usually comes duty and responsibility. From that young age, she understood that without her being useful, others would suffer. And as the single soul that someone else relied on, there's no doubt these feelings were intensified. Just as much as Yuri is overbearing about her, she is to some degree as well. Going through the trouble of arranging a fake boyfriend evolving into a fake marriage isn't exactly a simple task. But she did so because even now she feels the need to help him advance. She admits that if Yuri worries about her, he likely won't take a higher position at work and won't be as free in his pursuits. While she succeeded in providing for him, the need to be useful never really left, as she now strives to not be a burden. I think this puts her later doubts about her and Loid's arrangement into a good perspective. It's not just some generic doubt because she happens to be awful at the traditional duties of the role she's playing, especially in a culture steeped in such things, although that is part of it, but it's also because she's always needed to be useful to those around her. This is how she phrases her concerns with Loid, even saying directly, "Maybe if I contributed some of the money from my job to the family, I'd be a little more useful to him," which is exactly how she provided for her brother. Only now the skills she learned don't translate into the same kind of usefulness, leaving her feeling more empty. Loid, with the unlimited check of Wise, doesn't need extra money. In fact, he doesn't really need anything from her. He simply needs the appearance of a wife, a relatively easy task. She doesn't actually need to do anything. But sometimes that's the hardest thing of all. It's not easy to let go of your past duties in that way, to see the thing that gave your life definable value in relation to the world around you and just let it go. It's forever a part of you, shaping who you go on to become. She had to provide for Yuri due to the pressures of the world around them, one which not just took their parents but demands work and loyalty for survival. She found value in completing this task even as it forced her into a mold of sorts where her being was devoted to that purpose and wasn't allowed to grow outside of it. She never married, dated, or even kissed. She never grew a group of friends or found things she enjoyed outside of her duties. She was successful in what was needed, the specifics of a role. So when she seeks this new one and tries to be useful once more, she finds herself incapable of feeling how it needs to be done. She can't cook or kiss or know when her clothes have lint on them, so she must be awful because she isn't providing anything useful. But still, Loid doesn't think so. As far as he's concerned, she's great. So why does she feel like a failure still when the only factors in her success, Loid and Anya, are fine with her? Even if she may personally want to contribute, it's not like she's actively harming them or anything. But things aren't quite that simple. Even if she doesn't have to really be a wife and a mother, she's still being judged as one from everyone outside of that family. One of the truths the anime utilizes is the widespread reliance on perception and appearance that comes from times of such widespread distrust. In the name of safety and order, people were classified and judged because simple decisions are easier than learning the truth behind a person, and in dangerous times seen as safer as well. They make direct mention to a woman being reported and taken away under suspicion of espionage simply for being single to stress this pressure. The calculation in those tense times is destroy one life or risk destroying them all. Essentially, this is another game of roles. It's looking at people who don't fulfill one or maybe fulfill theirs poorly and applying a new one to them for simplicity. She's single, well, why could that be? Maybe she wants to be, but then if so, why would she want to be? Would a partner be too much? Would it be a pain to deal with? Or are they just a spy? The first line becomes rather complex, and the second one is an easier solution relying on distrust. You just say spy and call it a day. We see the same thing with Loid and the neighbors, who assume that he's a terrible father who cheats. Based on the evidence they have, that's the conclusion which is simply reached. It's not just a tool of government control, it's a human one for simplicity. But this is something we covered in depth here in regards to psychopaths if you want more on that topic. This gives us some more insight into Yor though. No matter what she feels and what Loid says, there are standards set for her that don't necessarily apply to her situation. There's no reason for her to cook when Loid is good at it. There's no need for them to kiss if they're only pretending, and the lint is just Loid's lie to plant and remove a bug anyway. These things, which become entirely meaningless and false, are made to be a much bigger deal because of those standards she has no need to meet. She's meeting other ones, as Loid says,
"You provide all the things that I never could."
She protects Anya, acts as a point of warmth for her, and is a perfectly natural partner for Loid to act out his ruse with, and so on. But these things aren't what others think she should be doing. The perfect family of their society is a wife who cooks and cleans and doesn't beat up thugs in a parking lot and teach her daughter how to punch and throw a ball. She's stuck between an odd set of harsh expectations and a fully unique reality. The idea of the perfect family that weighs on her can also be seen with her fear of butting in on how Loid raises his daughter. She correctly says from her experience that a little encouragement can go a long way when teaching a younger member of the family, as it really helped her brother. Because she was enthusiastic about his studies, he was as well. She essentially raised someone who went on to be successful and at a young age, putting aside his issues for a moment in that consideration. She has the most applicable experience for this situation, but there's an issue. Her role isn't one that actually exists. After giving good advice he took to heart, she still remarks that she's sorry because it's supposedly not the place of a second mother to raise the child someone else had. But at the same time, she's supposed to act motherly and perform the same duties, so she has to not raise the child while also making sure the child is raised properly. She has to have her daughter asked which of her mothers she liked more, because this second mom, who we were testing for motherly duties, could never actually be a real mom anyway. Her situation begins to break the mold even more, reaching a point where even if she was the perfect fit for it, it wouldn't matter because they never actually considered what a perfect fit for a second wife should be, only the first one. It's not simply the pressure of a label which is supposed to fit the situation, but knowing that the drive for simplicity of roles prevents them from accurately adapting it to fit her situation. Why would these people consider something that would never affect them? They wouldn't expand the mental power to do that. She has dueling expectations placed on her, the lax ones of Loid, the harsh ones of society, and the cold restrictions of her false situation. The first is a nice reprieve, but the latter two come together to form a scenario where success just isn't supposed to happen. What makes this all the more tragic is that, as we mentioned, she really has raised someone successful before. She's shown that she has what it takes to nurture and care for someone else, to be all the things she was expected to be, if in a somewhat unique way. Her and her brother may fight and bicker and have a super odd understanding, and on his part a creepy obsession, on her part a bit of excessive force, and all the other things that became apparent when they were together. They aren't your traditional family in any way, and from an outside glance, you may assume that they outright hate each other. But at the end of the day, it's a situation of love. I think we can see a lot of her doubt stemming from this situation too. This isn't the first time she's had a family situation that broke the mold. Her love has always had to be prefaced with a warning, trying to make those with something more traditional see it with just as much validity despite its appearance. It's the same thing she experiences in the interview and with her coworkers, and because of that pressure in her mind, where even the act of looking at a family savings account poster is something odd for her because she just couldn't be a woman with a family, even though she always was. There's no need for her to be anything more than she is to those who matter, but those who don't disagree. The perfect standard which everything is compared to stripped her of her validity, creating a cycle of negative feelings which then serve to only feed themselves and perpetuate an awful feeling. Something isn't perfect, and so it doesn't deserve to be, and so it never will. There's a lot of pressure to be felt from the idea of perfection, and I think Yor is another very good highlight of that when we look at her struggle within the roles of society, especially a society so reliant on them. But the idea of perfection does exist for a reason, right? Regaining her confidence in a conversation with Loid, he remarks that
They tell themselves this is how a wife should act. Striving to live up to one's ideals is admirable, but if you dwell on that too much, it's easy to lose sight of who you are.
there's a lot of evil that comes from painting ourselves into boxes of shoulds and should nots, but can we use those as tools to better ourselves? I think the answer is a sort of yes. The entire anime is Loid, Yor, and Anya attempting to play the perfect little family, and so far they've succeeded just enough for everyone's sake. But how they've succeeded isn't strictly in acting perfect, but rather in what they accomplished by trying to. They started the interview strong because they had a perfect day out. Loid fools the neighbors by making the excuse of a perfect father. But it's the feelings which went into those actions that actually found success, not the act of trying to find perfection for its own sake. Anya took the mock interview to heart because she had a reason to. They got her genuinely interested in things that just so happened to seem like a perfect child's interests. Loid made the perfect excuse to be absent at the aquarium, but he could only do so because he remembered his daughter's drawing and took her somewhere she would actually enjoy. And Yor has done the most good by just doing what she knows. She saved Anya from being kidnapped and helped the castle feel all the more real, and the neighbors don't doubt her one bit. Her best actions arise from her not being traditionally perfect for her role, but striving to be and doing what she can within her skills to be so. Perfection isn't something that we actually find. Society may treat it as such for simplicity, and our roles may strengthen that feeling and compartmentalize it within us, but perfection is only a template. It's the gathering of things society has come to see as worthwhile and something to be strove towards. It gives you somewhere to start, to say, let's have this day out and try these things to see if you like them, to say, okay, that worked well, let's go somewhere more for what you're feeling right now and figure out who we are. The feeling behind it is what matters. It's trying to make your family as happy as possible. So it doesn't matter how you actually do it or what the physical end goal of it is. Perfection is just an attempt to give everyone a place to start for the things that plague us all. And that way, it's almost admirable, at least how it starts. It's saying that we want the best to exist so that us and others can share in it. It's just sometimes we get lazy. We don't update it or let it change or apply it too heavily to situations where we shouldn't. We look to it as something for its own sake and not for the sake of why it was created in the first place. And Yor is a great look at that idea on a small scale, and I'm excited to see how the rest of the anime keeps playing with that idea. One of the most fascinating aspects of East Germany, which it's obviously parodying, is to me that standard of perfection, of the ideal citizen in a place which was so far from ideal, they literally had to build a wall to keep their own people in. Seeing a more lighthearted take on this idea playing out over the backdrop of not just the classic espionage of the time, but within a literally fake family who come to exemplify a sort of real ideal, is just a damn interesting premise. Something a depressed killjoy like me can even find something to talk about in a bright and joyful series. And if you'd like to see more on it, as always, let me know down below. Likes and comments are the best way because they help the video in the algorithm, but also let me know your thoughts and what you want to see and make better things for you. As always, a thanks to our Patreons who are right above me right now, where there's that important link in the pinned comment to Patreon and other things. But anyway, I'll just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.